Okay, so today we're going to go over on how to edit the weighting information that on the skin clusters. Okay, so the first one that we're going to edit, just because it will be the easiest, will be the leg. When you're adjusting or when you're painting weights, the easiest things to paint are going to be the skinny objects. So her legs are long and skinny. That makes it's going to make them really easy to do. So there's a couple ways to adjust weighting. I'm going to cover the seemingly complicated way first, and then I will cover the seemingly easier way, and then I'll go ahead and give you the warning that the complicated way, the seemingly complicated way, is actually probably faster than the seemingly simple way. So let's go over the complicated method first. And to use it, we need to switch into component mode, and we need to select a group of vertices. So I'm going to switch to edge mode. And then we can change this selection into vertices. So I'm going to press Control right click and 2 vertices. And I've got those vertices selected. Now, actually, before I do this, let me switch back to object mode and select the knee and rotate the knee back. It's almost always easiest to adjust the weighting of your mesh with it already being deformed. And then as you adjust the weighting, you can see what your changes are doing to the mesh. Okay, so switch back to component mode. And we go to the window, General Editors, Component Editor. And you want to make sure you have the Smooth Skins tab selected. And you can see in here a table of information. So the table that you're seeing is actually just a reduced table of all the influence objects that are controlling these vertices and their weighting information. Now, when we weighted these, when we created our skin clusters, we told it that to use a maximum number of influences is equal to 1. So we're only going to have 1 influence with values on it. So if I go to Options, Hide 0 columns, if I uncheck that, then I'm going to see a list of all the joints for my character. And then any of the joints listed across the top, each column is a joint. Each joint that can possibly control the vertices that I have selected will have values in there, in that cell. So I should only have 2, have the hip left and the knee left. And right now the hip is not controlling these vertices at all, hence their value is 0. Now, before I start adjusting this and smoothing it out, it's important to note that actually I showed you guys what normalized weights are, right? Okay, so I was about to do that again. So while I'm in here, I can adjust the weighting information by adding weight to the hip for these vertices. These vertices are going to follow the hip 50% because I drag selected those cells and then entered 0.5, in which case it automatically adjusts the knees weighting, so it's 0.5 for a total of 1, which means it normalized it. Okay, so a lot of times in here, it's easier to adjust this weighting in the component editor. So let me make a new selection. Turn off joints for now. Okay. Now some of these are controlled by the hip already, and some of them, most of them are controlled by the knee. You can see that really quick here. Now, if I want to add weight information to, say, just one of these vertices, let me select just this vertice right here in the front of the knee. Let's see if I can get the one yeah, that's the one I wanted, actually. Okay. Now, I can select that cell for the hip so I can add weight information to it. Actually, with a single value, this doesn't work. So let me select one more. I forgot that didn't work with a single value. So if I select two cells, then I have this slider at the bottom. And I can increase the weight the hip is controlling these vertices. And I can see it updating real time on my mesh in my perspective view. Okay, so there's a way to adjust that there. So that's really nice. Overall, when we're painting weights, we want to make sure that the faces keep their undeformed shape as best as possible, which hopefully means they're pretty squarish. They're very squarish at the angles. Okay, so the component editor is your friend. It intimidates a lot of people, but it is very, very useful. So let's see. That's how to use the component editor to adjust weights. Okay, so now let's switch to object mode. I'm going to right click on the mesh and go to Paint, Skin Cluster, Leg Skin Cluster. I got my tool settings open, and in the top of this I've listed these by hierarchy. That's how I like to do it. You can also list them alphabetically if you want to, or just tell it to be flat, which I don't even know what that means. But I like to list them by hierarchy. So I've got the hip and the knee listed as possible influence objects for this mesh. Now, the only two options that you should really even consider, in my opinion, when adjusting weights with the Paint Weights tool is the Add and the Smooth. Now, if you want to reduce the amount of control a joint has over a particular set of vertices, then what you need to do is select the joints that don't have as much control as they should and add influence to them. And that will save you an enormous headache of going back and adjusting weighting continuously. So that's the one big gotcha, or that's one big gotcha. There's another one. Okay, so I've got Add selected, and then this Add is based off of the opacity and the value. Now the opacity, if I set this to 1, every time I paint over a vertice, it's going to add 50% or 0.5 to the value to that selected influence object. Okay, in our case, all our influence objects are bones or joints, but they don't have to be. They could be meshes or curves or anything that has CVs or vertices. Could also control the mesh in a skin cluster. Okay, now if I switch my opacity to 0.5 and my value to 0.5, and then I change my profile to solid, which is I always use solid, just so you guys know. Now, if I set those settings there and I run over this vertice, then it's going to change it to 25% control. So it's half of the value. The opacity is telling it to do half per time I cross over the vertice of that value. So I could change this to do 1/10 of the value each time I cross over a vertice. Okay. Now, if I cross over this vertice multiple times, then I will get a total of 50%. Okay, until it's at 100%. Now, that's how you use the Add tool. To use the Smooth tool is really simple. It has the opacity value only, and that's how much smoothing it's going to do per pass. I like to change this down to something really small most of the time. And you can increase your brush size or decrease it by holding down B and then dragging left and right. There's Anthony. Let's see. I didn't know your mom was into rigging. Okay. So I'm smoothing this 1/10 per pass I cross over it. So that makes it nice and smooth. Okay. So let me go through and adjust the weighting on this more accurately. Let me show you some more options real quick. So in the tool settings, again, some people like to use this color ramp, and that will show you the value in color. White still means 100% control. Black means 0%. I don't like it, so I can always keep that off. I do use this display section a lot. You can tell it to draw the brush or not if you want to see it. I can't imagine why you wouldn't want to. You can draw the brush while painting or not. I guess I'd normally leave that off. Anyway, so that's that information, okay? But a lot of times it's helpful to turn off the wireframe so you can see the mesh without the wires. It's just easier to see the shape. Okay. And then sometimes you'll want to do both. You'll want to turn off the color feedback and the wireframe, and then you can just see it for what it is. And then you can see if you're having a good deformation or not. Okay. And then you can turn on and off X-ray joints, but this does not override whether they're showing or not. Right now mine are not showing. Okay. Now, I'm not going to tell you about the rest of the options. It's not necessary. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and just paint the weights for a minute, and if I think I do anything unique, then I'll let you know what that is. But let you see a little bit of a workflow. Go to add, switch to the knee. You just get a feel for it. Okay, so right there, I'm kind of losing the shape of my knee, so I don't want to do that. I want to keep the knee nice and pointy. Okay. It's also really nice to have a Wacom tablet or Cintiq monitor to paint weights. It's very useful. So again, I'm just trying to preserve the shape of the knee here. Okay. You can look at it smoothed if you want to, just pressing 3. It's a good idea to do. At least in feature film or feature animation, it will be smoothed at render time. I'm going to switch back to my selection tool and view that. And that looks pretty good. It's a good shape. Now I can select that mesh again and get back to my paint weights tool by pressing Y. If I want to bend the knee or a joint while I'm painting weights, I can just middle mouse click and then middle mouse click to manipulate the rotate tool. And then I can see that rotate even more. And I can, in doing so, I see that I have a pretty good knee shape, but the back of the knee probably could be a little bit better. So let me rotate that down so I can get to those vertices. I'm going to left click to get back to the paint weights mode. Press 1 to get back to the smooth mode. And then we're going to add weight to the knee. And so I'm trying to keep these as squarish as I possibly can. The best you can, because the more they stretch and move around, the less your texture is going to hold up. Which means the less likely it is to render accurately. If it gets really bad, the renderer won't be able to render it consistently, and you'll get flickering in your render. Okay, let's do that. We'll rotate it up. Liking that crease a little bit better. Okay, I'm going to call that good. So I'm going to set the rotation of this back to 0. I'm going to switch out of my paint weights tool. And even though these are not the same mesh, I can select them both. I don't know if it matters. It seems like it used to matter if they were smoothed or not. So I recommend unsmoothing them for this next step. And you can go to Skin, and we want to mirror skin weights option box. If I look at my little cursor down here, I see that positive X is on the side I selected first, and then the YZ is the plane that I want to mirror across. And so I'm mirroring from positive X to negative X, so I do need to check this. I got the YZ plane, mirror across the YZ plane, and I'm going to do it by closest point on surface, and then I like to change the influence association to 1:1 and the second association to closest joint, and I do want it to normalize. So after I have those settings, I click mirror, and now if I rotate the right leg knee, that should have worked. So let's go and investigate. We'll press Y. Okay. It looks like maybe I forgot to include that influence object, the hip influence object. Okay, so let's select the hip. We'll select that right leg mesh. We'll go to Skin, Add Influence, Option Box. We want to do the locked weights. We're not using geometry. We'll just click Add. Okay. Now, let's see what happens here. I'm going to go to Vertex mode. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to isolate the selection. Go to Vertex mode. I'm going to select all these vertices. That I want to be controlled by the upper leg. I'm going to go to Window, General Editors, Component Editor. It looks like for some reason the ankle is controlling a bunch of my selected vertices, but my hip is not, and neither is my knee. Okay, so it looks like it got bound to the ankle for some reason. So I'm going to select the hip right at the top, shift select, so I can get all of them, and I'm going to enter a value of 1. And then just to make sure that ankle doesn't have any control over this, I'm going to hold down shift and drag over the entire mesh. And I'm going to go to the knee because all these should be controlled by the knee. Drag to the bottom, enter a value of 1. So now those are all controlled 100% by the knee. And the ankle should no longer have any control over this. So if I go to object mode, actually go back to vertice mode and select the entire thing. Go to options in the component editor, hide 0 columns. The ankle is no longer listed, so I know it's not controlling it. So, and that's good. Okay. I'm going to turn this off for now. Enter a 0. And I need to remove that ankle as an influence object on this mesh. So I need to grab that ankle, shift select the leg, go to Skin, remove influence. Okay, now if I go to my Paint Weights tool, let's see. For some reason my Paint Weights tool doesn't want to work. It's kind of weird. Paint, skin cluster, right leg. That was weird. Anyway, it's working now. And I've only got the 2 influence objects that I want listed. So that's good. Now I'm back to working condition. So now I just need to select both of the meshes and go to the skin. My settings will still be there. And now I should be able to grab that knee and rotate it. And it should look good. Okay, so you only have to paint half of your mesh, as long as it's symmetrical. Yes? It works just the same, except you don't have to select 2 meshes, you only select 1. So the question was how to mirror on a single piece of geometry, and you just select that 1 piece of geometry and mirror. Okay, so I'm going to set that back to 0. And I'm going to stop this recording now.